But let's get straight to the graphic. Okay, college football playoff rankings. Good God, look down on the Paul, down at 15 and 16, Arizona State, Iowa State. I don't have any problems with probably most of the top 12. There's a couple. Oh, my God, Alabama's sitting pretty, and apparently they can't drop.
No, they cannot be jumped by anybody else who's not playing.
Okay, Miami's not playing.
Move.
Ole Miss is not playing. South Carolina's not playing. Arizona State and Iowa State are playing. Clemson's playing, right? UNLV's playing. Do you honestly believe any of those teams, with the way this has been set up, would jump Alabama from where they are in that top 25?
I think the Big 12 champ will.
Okay.
And if Clemson wins, I don't know what that means for SMU. But, yeah, I do think the Big 12 champ will, because I don't know if you could stand up there straight-faced and say a fourth SEC team that's 9-3 and a blue blood program just historically gets in over one of the Power Four conference champs. I think that will happen.
I think they could do it with a straight face.
I
think that probably most of the people would say, "Oh, that's good," because we see what they do. Okay, here's the problem I have with Alabama. By the way, Garrett, let's go to the next one. This is Ward Manuel. What you said, Paul, and I had to read this like 4 times to make sure I got this correct. He was being asked about the way that the teams who are not a part of conference championships, for example, the 4 we mentioned, who are back-to-back-to-back, which is Alabama, Miami, Ole Miss, and South Carolina, teams that are not playing cannot be adjusted where they are compared to other teams that are not playing, which means that those guys are going to stay the same, right where they are, other than if somebody jumps down.
Yeah, so then they could move back. But, look, here's the thing. If Clemson wins this week, or then –
what if you have a Big 12 champion and Clemson win?
Yeah. Okay, and then – okay, let's say Army loses, right? Or whoever loses the AAC championship game, that means that Louisville and Duke from the ACC could get in, and then Clemson's strength of schedule goes up, right? So then they played and won, and now their strength of schedule is up. So how does that affect everything else? And those teams, it's very complex, but yeah, they can't move. Only the teams behind them who are playing can move, or maybe the teams in front of them. But if Georgia loses to Texas and they have 3 losses, then what's their resume?
Oh, they're fine.
Yeah, they're fine.
Oh,
exactly, they're fine.
They're just fine.
Which is basically them saying, like, any team that would be, like, we could rotate these in. Alabama's not in the SEC championship game because of tiebreakers, not because of anything else. So whoever was in there because of tiebreakers, Georgia won it. The other 3 lost teams are all the same in the committee's opinion. South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama, they're all the same. They're all better than Iowa State and Arizona State, which I just don't understand. But historically, this is true. Baylor and TCU did not play in Week 13.
Right.
And then the team that jumped them played.
Yeah, but that was 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
That was TCU at 3, and they won like 60-0.
Yeah.
Then you had, I forgot who the other team was at 4, and then you had Baylor, I think was 5, I think was 6th. And then what was crazy is for all that time, TCU remained ahead of Baylor because the common thought was that they were still by the end of the year better, even though Baylor won straight up 61-58. Baylor moved from 6 to 5. TCU went from 3 to 6, and they won their last game by 50. We knew from the beginning. Now, let's go to a couple other things. Chris Vanini. It's hard to overstate how much brand damage, and I almost could say brain damage, the College Football Committee did to itself by keeping Florida State out last year, just fueled every SEC ESPN conspiracy imaginable and negated the purpose of playing and winning games, and I still hate it.
Yeah, you hate it. I'm always going to hate it, and it's, we had Dave Bartu on said they did exactly what they'd done historically. But the way that they framed it was, Jordan Travis is not there. Well, we saw the FSU play 2.5 full games without him, and they won all of them. So, like, that's where it didn't hold up of, well, they still won the games when they played without him. So why is that a factor now? Now, had Florida State lost one of those games, like had they lost to Louisville, then you really do have a question of like, all right, well, they lost the conference championship game. He's not there, but they shut Louisville down. Like, Louisville didn't pee a drop all night. In fact, had the ball at the 10-yard line, 1st and 10 after a fumble and didn't score. And it was like, well, the Florida State can't win without him. No, they won essentially 3 games. Actually, when he went out and when he broke his leg, they were behind. So, like, that factor didn't match up. Like, you understand that it could be a factor, but it didn't match up because they hadn't lost. And in these cases, like, they're using the strength of schedule thing, but I don't think they're applying it evenly throughout. It's applied as they see it.
All right, we know how the game conundrum. You and I have become like, it's getting scary that we believe in, we agree on a few things. Sometimes I just want to like nuke you, and I have, I think, a couple of times, and a few others. But here's what you're right. We know how the game is played. Mm-hmm. We know how the game is played. We saw it the very first year when it was a TCU, Baylor, Ohio State, but then Ohio State went on to win it all, and it's kind of like made the committee look pretty smart. But then both TCU and Baylor were left out. We've seen what happened to Florida State. I would love to have seen, not that I want to see anybody get hurt, but I'd love to have seen, okay, hold on, Paul. Let's see. What if Dylan Gabriel went down? What if, well, Quinn Ewers goes down? They might have somebody just as good or better, according to a lot of Texas fans. What if Penn State's quarterback, Allaire, went down? What if Carson Beck went down, which sometimes he has not been all that. If these guys went down, would those guys drop out? I know there's 12 teams, not 4. I just would love to see Nico at Tennessee, Rourke at Indiana, or Milroe at Alabama if they would use that same type of, I guess you could say, philosophy.
They won't. They won't. And
well, some of them won't now because they're not going to play.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing, when you hear the conference commissioner saying we have to get this right, they say we have to get this right. No, they have to get it right for me. It's not about getting it right for the fans or getting it right for college football. It's about getting it right for my agenda. That's the issue at hand here, is that they want to get it right for them. So Greg Sankey's like, we got to get it right. In his mind, there's only one right answer, and that's 4 minimum SEC teams.
Yeah, I'd like to see 3 get in just to see his head explode.
And I think only 3 should get in. I think they should, but you know.
Now, here's what I do see about the argument for Alabama, and it's a pretty good argument. But then when you're in, like, if you're in the courtroom, you're allowed to like give your presentation of what you think about somebody that's guilty or not. When you're in the courtroom, though, there's another attorney who's representing the other person, their client. And you're allowed to at least have your side of the story. So I don't ever hear about Alabama's losses.
They lost to 2 6-6 teams.
Oklahoma, who was dead in the water, beat the crap out of them. Mm-hmm. Beat them up. I mean, they did. And then they also lost to Vanderbilt. Mm-hmm. And they ended up, I think, 6-6, whatever that was. At the time, they were playing pretty well, which is also part of the deal. But I always hear about who they are and who they've beaten, but I never hear about who they lost to. And the times it seemed like to me is there's only a few of those teams that have to also explain their losses, not just who they have beaten along the way. Why don't losses count anymore?
The formula is not spread equally around. It's not spread equally around. That's the issue at hand. That's where we are. I'm facing all akimbo here. But I don't like the way that they do things. I don't like the way this is, but it's not really going to change until there's transparency, because the only person who has to be accountable for anything is Ward Manuel, and then he's just out there taking the bullets. He's like, that guy every year is a human shield. That's all he is. And I understand wanting to keep some of this secret because you want to have discussions, but I do think there needs to be transparency where everybody on that committee can say, here's what I thought, and I was outvoted. That's fine. If it's Democratic, it's Democratic, but we have no idea if it's Democratic or not, or what agenda's being pushed. then the fact that there's no transparency makes it more suspect. The more you say, like, no, there's no way that we can let people in our decisions. Because I get it. They're trying to protect from the social media world of loud.
Yeah.
All right, but you should never let loud disagreement prevent you from doing what is right. And that's where I think that the committee and I and the rules don't see eye to eye is that pick your playoff. But the fact that you send one guy out there to read the party line is kind of bullcrap.
I don't know if I'd ever want that job because people might want to find your address. Remember, who was the Arkansas? Mm-hmm. Who was the Arkansas AD that was the first? And you could just tell that it was like going up for your execution whenever you had to answer the
Conundrum
question.
had the best analogy. He said, Paul, you don't get to see the Pope elected. Sorry.
There you go.
And here's the thing. As a Catholic, I can tell you I have huge problems with the transparency of that organization. All right? So very, very similar. And maybe that's why I feel about the college football committee the way that I do as a person who's a very conflicted Catholic on the way that, that whole organization has done their business.
You see the white smoke, right? The smoke pops up, you're fine. You got a guy.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. We've got a good Pope now. I like the Pope now. The Pope before that was in the Hitler Youth. So, I mean, I know everybody can.
People can change.
People can change, but like that to me would have been that's a maybe Pope disqualifier.
All right, a lot of the Catholics in our chat room, you guys can talk with Paul amongst yourselves. And then this last night, this was hilarious. This is Jamie Pollard. He's the AD at Iowa State. We've had Jamie on the show. Disappointing that strength of schedule clearly does not matter for SMU. Indiana, Boise State, message is clear. Win as many games as possible, regardless of who you play. Time to rethink non-conference scheduling. Very different standard than the basketball committee, which he serves on that committee. Followed by our good friend as well.
Oh, I think these are a little bit out of order. Go to Rick Hart first.
There you go. Rick Hart, who we've had on the show too from SMU. Jamie. This is at Jamie. Respect you, but bad take. Iowa State had a no D. Iowa, Arkansas State, no non-conference. SMU had Nevada, HCU, which is Houston Christian, TCU, BYU, and scrambled due to Vandy dropping us. SMU, 1 of 2 in wins. All conference games, 1 of 3 with 9 Power 4 victories. Trailed a total of 6+ minutes. Last 9 games that they played, I could go on, stay off my lawn. Then, Jamie, with a response, Rick, beat Clemson Saturday, and I will respect your ranking. Until then, you did not play Clemson, Miami, Georgia Tech, or Syracuse, the best teams in the ACC, and lost to BYU straight up at home. Oh, yeah, that game did happen. I think, looks like your lawn may be artificial. After that, I was laughing so hard, my sides hurt. But I love that. Those are 2 good dudes fighting for their programs. Jamie Pollard with Iowa State, possibly in the mix if they win, and also Hart, who, of course, right now has SMU inside the bubble. Not on the bubble, but inside the bubble of the college football standings.
Yeah.
That means it's important. ADs start fighting with each other. It's like they trying to plant a flag at midfield last weekend.
It is. I'm here for it. Keep fighting.
Yeah.
Look, I honestly think we do need more voices. It was one of the reasons I like ADs breaking out of it, like saying their own thing. Like, look, we can't hear from Mac because he signed an NDA. Like, he can't say anything about it. So I would like to hear the other 15 ADs from the Big 12 and the other ones from the ACC. I would like to hear their opinion on it.
I do too.
I want to hear their opinion. I want to know where they stand, because you can kind of paint them in a camp of like, okay, well, this is where they feel. I also don't think that enough of them, again, answer direct questions on this enough about, look, why is, like, right now the question has to be asked, why do you think that the SEC is that much better? Like, it has to, like, it's strength of schedule.
Can I answer that? Because.
Yeah, but that's not an answer.
And by the way, I do think they're really good. I think they are the best football conference. I think the Big Ten is second. And then I think you could take it or leave it. Probably right now, based on rankings, ACC would be third and the Big 12 would be fourth. But that's basically a beauty pageant right there. Not what we see, and not hypothetical games, which we got into quite a bit last week. So what happened about Alabama's losses? You don't hear that. You hear about that they're 3-1 overall against the top 25, which also has to be a part of the conversation about where you put teams. Lane Kiffin, he goes on and on. This is to the committee. Basically, do you actually watch the quality of players, the teams, the road environments? We played in one of yours this year. Or just try and make the ACC feel relevant? By the way, one of your teams, I think it was Virginia Tech, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Paid us not to play again this year or next year. The number 12 spot you guys had, Clemson ranked last week. How did that go against the SEC? Rewatch Georgia and Clemson closely if you want a reminder of the two conferences. Now, Lane Kiffin wants to go back to week 1. Well, hell, we're not even allowed to go back to BYU beating SMU.
No.
Right? So it's always how you want to paint a picture.
Well, and the other thing about that is he wants to go back to week 1. All right, that's fine. But that's not about the SEC versus the ACC. That's about Georgia versus Clemson.
Right.
That's what that's about. Like, trying to say that this team in this conference wouldn't be this if you put their roster in this one, maybe you're right, but maybe you're wrong, because that's why you play the games. So the games, we have to find a metric that matters. And yes, strength of schedule has to matter. It has to matter. And I don't like the idea that people are going to, well, what's the point of strength of schedule if you're not going to do that? But also, losses have to matter. And so
yes,
that's what wins and losses have to matter.
Yeah, they
do. Have to matter, and they have to matter on a scale that makes sense for everybody, not just on 20 years of history.
So there's that. Also, this from Tim Fitzgerald. He's our good friend that works and covers Kansas State. He's been battling cancer for a long, long time. He and my brother communicated when my brother Robert eventually passed away earlier this year. Just because of that doesn't mean that Tim's right. Just because of the emotions of that doesn't mean that he's just throwing stuff off. Here's his point. Let me remind everyone that BYU won at SMU. They didn't just beat SMU. It wasn't neutral. It wasn't in Provo. It was in Dallas. That apparently only counts as a negative for SMU, but not a positive for what is 10-2 BYU. The College Football Committee is a joke. And then he went on to talk about the Big Ten and the SEC. I almost want to go back to the days when you had the AP and UPI, and whoever decided to vote for who was the national champion, that was it, and not all this other stuff. We could argue after the rankings come out. It's even now, but it's because of the passion for college football. Listen to the numbers. The ratings are ridiculous. Millions upon millions of people are watching the games, and that's why the College Football Playoff Committee can pay everybody so many millions of dollars, conferences getting what they want. So enough of that, right? We saw this late yesterday. I didn't say anything about it because I didn't like who I saw reporting this, but I do know Jason Shear. Noah Fifita, there was speculation he was leaving Arizona. Nope. His father has told Jason Shear in the website 247, who covers Arizona Wildcat Authority, that he has no intentions of entering the portal. Connor Wigman, A&M, out, gone. Had a chance, looked like maybe he was going to be a fit.
He's 4-1 as a starter.
Was 4-1 as a starter. He also battled injuries on and off. Remember when he came back and how Mike Elko was pissed off at some of the things that were said about him? Eventually, Mike Elko replaced him because Marcel Reed came in. One game, then Wigman started, and then Reed came back in again. There's a mess at quarterback. I'm not saying that about Wigman and or Marcel Reed, but A&M, my God, you think with all of who they're allowed to recruit and who they have, the money they have, all of what they have other than really a lot of great championships or anything like that, could find a damn quarterback. They've always messed this up. They messed up Kenny Hill. They messed up Allen, who played 10, 12 years in the NFL. You would think they could get this right, but for whatever reason, whether it's someone or whether it was Jimbo or now with Elko, it's his first year, that's who he had, can they ever get it right at quarterback? Some teams, like the one they hate, A&M or Texas, they have Ewers, who I know is not flawless, and then they have Arch Manning behind him. And then they have another player behind him. and then another player behind them.
Well, and look, they also, Jalen Henderson, who was the third-string quarterback, he didn't play at all this year, was beaten out by Marcel Reed in camp. And look, Marcel Reed has a ton of potential, and he's won some games. He's got to get better at passing the ball, and we'll see what they do. They've got young quarterbacks coming in. But can he ever
really get better? He's a very diminutive player. He's dynamic. He has great speed. He's got some moxie, but I don't know how much better he can be as a passer.
And that's a good question. We don't know. But again, it's his first year, so I think you have to – and you can build an offense around that can win with him passing the way he did. Part of it, look, A&M probably wins 2 more games than they did this year with better play calling.
Yeah,
in situation, not overall, but situational. Like Colin Klein did a good job. I stopped short of saying he did a great job in year 1 because situational play calling in the tight games wasn't the best. But he'll get better at that because it's not like he was tragic at it. It was just like against Auburn and Notre Dame in particular, there were a couple times, and against Texas. I don't know if they beat Texas if they make those better play calls. I have no idea.
A&M?
Yeah, but no. I do know. Look, it was 17-0 at halftime. It was 17-7 when the game ended. So A&M had opportunities to win that game.
But the quarterback had nothing to do with them being stuffed 4 times, 3rd and 4th down on 2 different possessions.
That's situational play calling I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay.
So if you change that situational play calling, I think that game, the narrative of the game is at least different because A&M probably at least scores on offense 1 time, right? So that's where it would be different. Now, I don't know if Texas was better. Like, there's no doubt about that. But they didn't score points in the second half, and that's significant given that, okay, A&M's defense did its job and held Texas to 17. The offense did not do that. The defense even scored the points for them. So the defense did its job over and beyond of what you expect playing a number 2, 3 team in the country, only giving up 17 points. The offense failed A&M the other night.
All right, they did. They did, but the defense gave up the long run to Ewers early that set up their first score, a couple of 3rd down conversions, and I thought A&M's defense never really. I guess they got to Ewers. I don't even know if they ever had a sack of him. Maybe they did. All right. Couple of other notes, a lot of other things going on, of course, the transfer portal. Fresno State wide receiver Jalen Moss, 103 catches for nearly 1,300 yards, 11 scores the past couple of years, and also a punt returner, as an all-conference punt returner. He has entered the portal. We mentioned Wigman has entered the portal, which, by the way, since Wigman entered the portal, Haynes King, remember, entered the portal after he was, and I know he also was injured and turned out to be a hell of a quarterback at Georgia Tech. Now, this is interesting. Jeremiah Donati at TCU is taking the job at South Carolina to be their new AD. It's a pretty good time to be at South Carolina with their football team on a run at 9-3. So TCU is going to have to leave or have to find a successor. Of course, they had Del Conte. He went to Texas. Donati goes to South Carolina. And their job opening begins immediately.
TCU is a great AD job to have, and they're going to have a lot of candidates. But given the state of college football right now, isn't it easy? Like, if you're going to go to the SEC and you don't have to, really, sell anybody on what you're doing.
Well, it is. Hey, let's be honest here. I just said that Chris Del Conte went from TCU to Texas. Now, he was there before they joined the SEC, but he was very much in on all that with Kevin Eltife and others about the move. And now Donati, who's done a really good job at TCU, he jumps to a team that's a part of the SEC. So that doesn't surprise me at all. I don't know does this have meat on the bones? Lincoln Riley and UCF. I've seen Scott Frost, but this is from The Athletic, that UCF has at least discussed or inquired about Lincoln Riley as a replacement for Gus Malzahn.
You want to talk about, it wasn't that shocking. Like, it's shocking that Oklahoma lost a coach without firing them or them retiring. Like, Barry Switzer had to retire because the NCAA was at the door, right? And Bob Stoops retired because he wanted to. Bud Wilkinson retired because he wanted to. Every other coach in Oklahoma history has been fired, except Lincoln Riley, who just woke up one morning and said, hey, guys, I'm moving to California. That's really the only time that's happened to them. So for that to happen to them, and then for that guy to then go to a place that's not a blue blood would be shocking. I don't think this is going to happen. But
today he said, "I'm a Trojan. It's a non-starter, a non-issue. I'm home."
Yeah,
as he was doing a presser on National Signing Day with also USC and everyone else signing up the next level of their players. I just mentioned Fresno State wide receiver Mills leaving. How about Matt Entz, USC linebackers coach? He was also a former head coach at that powerhouse factory of North Dakota State. Chris Kleiman, among others, won a couple of national titles. He is now headed to be the head coach at Fresno State.
You know, Fresno State a couple of head coaches ago had a very successful guy come out of those ranks named Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah.
And then he went to Washington. Now he's at Alabama. Matt Entz, 3 years max at Fresno State. I'm telling you right now, 3 years max, and he'll be somewhere else.
Okay.
That's what I'll tell you.
All right.
He's damn good at what he does.
Well, we've seen that Matt Campbell, where he was, where Kleiman was, where Leipold was. What was it?
Jamie Chadwell's going to be the next one probably. So,
Yep. And then also this 5 players named Freshman of the Year finalists. This is the award named after Sean Alexander, the former Alabama great, who was fantastic in the NFL, and then all of a sudden he was done after like a 5-year run. Ryan Williams, the spectacular wide receiver, Bama. Coy Parrish at Minnesota, hell of a safety. Jeremiah Smith, kind of a Ryan Williams, another one of the elite receivers as a freshman. Dylan Stewart from South Carolina. Man, they had some
dudes.
He's
a monster.
Yes, and then Colin Simmons,
also a monster.
Edge rusher from the University of Texas. So those 5 players are the finalists for the Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year, Player of the Year award.
So, when I saw this today, my first thought was, damn it, I have to vote for this because we vote for all of them. And so now I have to try to put these guys in some sort of order. And how do I differentiate between Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith? They're pretty much had the same season. How do I differentiate between Colin Simmons and Dylan Stewart? Pretty much had the same kind of awesome season, right? So
I think you just got to vote safety.
Minnesota might get it because I don't know how to quantify that Ryan Williams or Jeremiah Smith was better or Simmons Stewart were better.
Welcome to me by 5 o'clock Monday afternoon. I have to vote for either Travis Hunter or Ashton Genty. I have all the stuff in front of me. I am not going to vote till after the weekend, even though Travis Hunter's not playing. That is going to be one of those that keeps me up throughout the night on Sunday. All right, there we are with that. Oklahoma, Oregon, Ole Miss all made a push for Baylor linebacker because he's signed Caleb Burns. He's a top high-level player. Baylor doesn't get a lot of top 100 players. They started towards the end of the Art Briles era. Katie Cannon, who was the other one that they had that was such a great receiver? They had a few. Spencer Drango, the offensive lineman from Cedar Park, but they were able to sign him today. A lot of people went after him. He took trips, but today signed with Baylor. And we'll have a guest on in the 4 o'clock hour to discuss the Texas programs and what they did today. If you want to in the chat room, tell me how you feel like your school did, and I'll read those. And don't act like every player you signed. Of course, the coach is going to do this, and maybe they're right. UConn and Baylor tonight, tip-off at 5:30 in a men's basketball game. So that's what we have. So much to get to. Man, it never stops, right? Never stops. I'd like to ask the chat this question, too, and we're going to have our first guest here in a minute, Taylor McCarg. How about this? Taylor, who played at Rice, followed by Scott Abel, who's the new coach at Rice. I didn't even know about that. I didn't think about that until I started typing up the lineup. Taylor will tell us about the standings, his thoughts about that, and also much more. Among the 12, which right now includes Alabama at 11, Miami at 12. No Big 12 team is in among the 12. The winner of that game, Arizona State, Iowa State, will be 11-2. There is a chance that's not enough based on what might happen this weekend, and there's a chance that they jump up high. And of course, Boise State has to take care of business against Barry Odom and UNLV. Among the 12 teams, Garrett, would you put those up one more time if you still have it?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Among the standings, which of these 12, by Sunday afternoon, when the standings come out after the conference championship games, which start, I think, Thursday or Friday, which of the 12 will not be among the 12 on Sunday afternoon?
Well, I mean, the Big 12 champion to me is going in. I don't think, I mean, I know it looks like it's not, but the Big 12 champion will have that win. They'll have a win over, either way, Iowa State or Arizona State's going to have a win over a 10-2 team. Like, that's a top 20 opponent and all those things. So that's going to weight in their favor, which will jump them over at least Miami. I mean, Miami.
Well, because if it jumps them over Miami, that they would be next, because Alabama, they're not playing. They're not going to drop unless somebody in front of them may lose, but that now, doesn't seem like that.
Alabama, I think Alabama's nightmare scenario is Clemson beats SMU and SMU stays in. Like, they don't move SMU out. So if Clemson beats SMU and SMU drops to, say, the 12 seed, Arizona State or Iowa State becomes like the 11 seed, then that pushes Miami and Bama out.
Well, okay, if the Big 12 team moves up to one of the 4 byes, if they move up to one of the top 4 seeds, whoever wins that game.
And look, Boise State losing would be great for the Big 12.
Well, what Boise State you think would stay 9, go 10, 9?
No, I don't.
You think they'll end up at 12?
Yeah, I think they'll end up at 12. Well, and here's the thing. Well, if UNLV beats them, then UNLV and Boise State.
No, but what if they win?
If they win, I think they'll stay about where they are.
Okay.
You know, I don't know, like, you know, it's, we'll see. I mean, the problem I have with this whole thing is that, you know, the Big 12 teams are ranked way too low. Like, the fact that we're even questioning this is ridiculous. And it's just because, you know, Arizona State is ranked 4 behind Alabama because Arizona State has sucked for a long time until now. And they're being punished for something that players that aren't even on the team anymore did. And Alabama is being rewarded for things that players and coaches who aren't on the team anymore did. It's stupid. It's stupid. Alabama, look, Arizona State lost to Cincinnati without their quarterback, which I thought was supposed to mean something, right? Sam Leavitt didn't play against Cincinnati. Arizona State's other losses to Tech. Tech is 8-4. Well, that to me is about the same as Alabama losing to 2 6-6 teams. Call me crazy.
Yeah, I am.
I mean, you know.
I am. Because if you look at their schedule, they beat Utah when they were ranked 16th. They beat Kansas State when they were ranked 16th. They beat BYU when they were 14th. So they've got wins in the top 25. Now, and then, of course, they have a chance to beat another team in that mid, 16. They have a chance to play 3 different teams ranked 16th in the country. And they beat Utah, Kansas State, who were 16th, BYU was 14th, and now they play Iowa State. Listen, everybody has an opinion. If you have if you like the SEC, you think everything's fine, or maybe not. I mean, Lane Kiffin's a little bit nervous, right? He's going to be left out on the doorstep. If you're a fan of the ACC, you feel like they should get 2 teams in, SMU or Miami. If SMU takes care of Clemson, if you're a Big 12 fan, I think right now you're just hoping somebody gets in. Well, whoever it might be, Iowa State or Arizona State. I do think the argument that 2 should get in for the Big 12 is a little bit far-fetched. And listen, I'm just being honest because of what the setup is. And then if you're a fan of the Big 10, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana, and Oregon, I don't know how any of those are going to be out of the top 12. Are they with 4? Are they done with 4? Penn State's not going to drop.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to knock. They're in the Big 10 championship game, but they're not going to go out of the top 12.
No.
Indiana's not playing. They're not going out of the top 12. Oregon could lose, and they might drop.
The only way Indiana goes out is if whatever happens behind them of teams that are playing is so overwhelming. If Iowa State beats Arizona State 39-0, then you're like, damn, they might be pretty good. You know, that to me would be the only way that Indiana drops out.
But if you're not playing and you can't have somebody jump you unless they're playing, then that would knock Alabama out.
Now, that's just what they said last night.
I know.
So
I know.
If it fits the narrative next week where I think one of the things they're scared of is going to Greg Sankey and going, hey, Greg, I know that we said that we could, but here's the thing. You saw the games this weekend. You watch television, right? I know you watch television. We're going to have to change this, and then he's going to be able to like, well, no, I said this wasn't going to happen. Like, well, you get 3 teams and not 4, and he's like, yeah, but the world will end. And they're like, no, it's not going to. And he's like, oh, yours will. And, yeah, I see how this all plays out. I know I'm doing like a little teleplay here, but, you know.
So right now the Big Ten pretty much locked in with 4. The SEC is pretty much locked in with 3, wanting 4. The ACC might get 2. The Big 12 will get, you would think, 1. And then the G5, most likely Boise State, but there's a possibility that could be somebody else. All right, when we come